Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade is a strategy role-playing game where most people
build an army
to overcome its many chapters. However, in this playthrough, I am going to follow the second half of that famous article, and
trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance. Rated everyone.
we begin in Lyn hard mode, in a prologue containing only Lyn. The map is simple, and as I kill Battle the Beast I am rewarded with a strength level up, a very rare and important stat for Lyn to get. In Chapter 1 of Lyn mode in this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, Kent and Sane show up and try to teach me about the weapon triangle, but seeing as how Lyn can only use swords, I have already won. I use the forest to help against the bandits' inaccurate attacks, and run the cavaliers around to prevent them from seeing combat. I pull the bandits one by one on enemy phase, as even in a forest, Lyn can still get hit and die. I heal up before taking on the boss, but thanks to the weapon triangle, it was an unnecessary use of a vulnerate, and Lyn reaches level 4, still with 5 strength. In Chapter 2 of this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, we fight, surprise, more bandits, this time led by a mercenary called Glass, who doesn't understand what PRF weapons are. Kent and Sane can stay safe in a corner on this map, letting the noble lady they're supposed to be bodyguarding fight all the bandits on her own. I take the time to hack through a stone wall with a sword instead of climbing over a row of mountains, and take on Glass, once again starting on enemy phase. I decide to not fight the last bandit on the map, as Lyn is guaranteed to max her level before promotion anyway, and seize the throne, and with it, the Manikadi, the best weapon Lyn is likely to hold in the entire game. In Chapter 3 of this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, we get 2 more units who are not lords. Unfortunately, we must sacrifice the northern village, as Lyn, being a noble lady of Caelin, cannot lower herself to climb peaks like a bandit. Fortunately, this map is perfectly set up so we can stand on this forest and kill every other enemy. Unfortunately, the bandit who attacked the northern village works his way around the back, so the plebeians need to rush through the choke point and let their lord take care of the bandit problem. I sell all my unneeded weapons and make sure to be stocked up on swords and vulneraries before taking down the boss. Lyn has managed to gain strength surprisingly regularly, as at level 8 she has a matching 8 strength, an incredibly blessed Lyn for this incredibly cursed run. In Chapter 4 of this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, Lyn must protect not only her own band of peasants who are supposedly protecting her, but also a sick woman who is holed up in a random dilapidated fort for seemingly no reason, from yet another swath of bandits. It would seem that either the entire population of Lycia has turned to banditry, or that Lyn's escorts have deliberately chosen the most dangerous path home in order to get her killed. Also conveniently, attacking Natalie is Dorcas, her husband, who is very easily convinced to banditry, and is also very easily convinced to leave it. It is not very difficult to stuff Dorcas into the back room with everyone else, thanks to Lyn's 8 strength allowing her to one-round most of the enemies on the map. I cannot kill the boss, but waiting out the clock is just as good, and everyone who is not a bandit makes it through the night safely. In Chapter 5 of this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, Lyn rescues another pair of delinquent plebeians in the form of Urk and Sarah, a mage and a healer, who are also sadly of the lower classes. More bandits are attacking, but with some clever positioning in the forests, Lyn can still solo them all and keep her ever-growing party of cheerleaders safe. Once the immediate threat is dealt with, I consolidate my extra items and sell them off in the local armory, while Lyn goes forward to take down the 5th bandit boss in a row. I promise later chapters will get more interesting. Lyn reaches level 11 for her trouble. Upon reviewing her stats against her averages, my Lyn is blessed in strength, skill, speed, and luck at the cost of hit points and resistance. We will see if her offensive power remains effective throughout the rest of the run. In Chapter 6 of this
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, we arrive at a chapter that is notable for 3 things. First, we are finally not fighting bandits. Second, Wrath gets a forced kill in a cutscene that we cannot prevent. Third, this is the first chapter that I cannot simply play full footage at 1000% speed for, mostly because I softlocked myself by using a door key to open the wrong room. While I could always use Matthew to open this door, because this chapter is possible to complete without using him, means I needed to restart. The solution to a Matthew-free clear is to use the door key from the center village on the south door. Hitting the button here opens the main room. Using the soldier's door key on the west door lets me step on the switch hiding the boss, whom I can easily one-round with a Manikadi. I miss out on all the treasure, but can clear the map using only Lyn. In Chapter 7 of this
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, we finally unlock battle preps, meaning I can ditch most of my plebeian companions and let Lyn fight fully on her own, except for a friendly monk and a young boy that are force deployed. Despite having a noble bearing and being a literal dragon respectively, neither of these two have the Lord class, so they will not be used. This does mean I am missing a future Gaiden chapter, but if you thought I could kill Kashuna with only 3 lords in one turn, you have far more hope in me than I do. Chapter 7 introduces us to enemy shamans, in addition to several bandits and mountains. Despite being the game's introduction to enemy mages, we cannot buy a pure water from the shop, which would have been a nice, albeit unnecessary touch. We also cannot rescue the eastern village in time, as Lyn gets slowed down by the mountains. Lyn is so fast and lucky, however, that most enemies on this map cannot hit her, with even the boss having only a 41% hit chance, making this an easy clear. In Chapter 7X of this
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, I decided to go to the Gaiden chapter for no other reason than because I can. The Black Fang enemies here aren't that much stronger than the normal chapter enemies of Lyn mode. This chapter just has a larger number of them and a greater variety of units, including reinforcements. The thief leaves immediately with the hammer, and getting surrounded by mages and lance-wielding enemies puts Lyn into a dangerous situation where she almost dies, but eventually Lyn dodges enough attacks while healing to stabilize, and hunts down all of the mobile enemies. I take down the boss with a Manikati crit, get a good level up, and then have to slowly rout the rest of the non-aggressive enemies to finish out the chapter. In Chapter 8 of this
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, Lyn gets shot by a ballista while enemies charge in from both sides. I rush Lyn east to deal with the mages and get ready to protect the village, parking her on a forest to deal with the cavaliers when they get in range. I'm able to defend the village, and I get an actually useful weapon for my troubles in the form of the Lance Reaver. Since Reaver weapons flip and double the weapon triangle, this will surely come in handy for the rest of Lyn mode. The boss, Yogi, and his squad all have Reaver weapons, demonstrating the power of doubling a reversed weapon triangle. However, a Lyn with capped speed doesn't care, easily dodging even the Sword Reaver and one-rounding the boss with the Manikati. In Chapter 9 of this
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
playthrough, we are introduced to 2 annoyances. The first is Fog of War, which will limit our vision of enemies and reinforcements. The second is Wallace, who despite my best efforts, still manages to get found and attacked by the bandits that surround the starting zone. I disarm him so he doesn't kill anything, and position Lyn forward on a forest so she can take on as many enemies as possible by herself. Lyn has no issue one-branding all but the cavaliers, even with an iron sword, and the Manikati can take down those too, except for this lucky cavalier that managed to dodge 2 attacks in a row. Eventually, Wallace and Lyn get surrounded, and I have to slowly hack my way out against enemies who refuse to get killed on enemy phase. But eventually, I fight my way through to Eagler, who calls me an imposter before getting crit and killed. Chapter 10 is the final chapter of Lyn mode in
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
It features a large number of enemies that pose little threat, Rain that periodically slows all movement for 1 to 2 turns, and Lundgren, a boss that I'm still not very sure my Lyn can take on fairly. The majority of the chapter is uninteresting, with the only notable thing being that it uses up all of my weapon uses outside of the Manikati. You can buy armor slayers in the armory across the river to the south, which Lyn can cross because lords can swim, but the Manikati is superior in every way that matters. My Lyn can barely survive getting hit once by Lundgren's Silver Lance, and I also run out of vulneraries, so I heal up slightly, lure Lundgren into using his less accurate javelin, and then charge in hoping for the best. Luckily, combined with the damage I had done earlier, a critical hit can finish him off, leaving Lyn with 2 HP left. She levels up to 20, and I get another depressing level up. My Lyn will be going into Hector hard mode capped with 26 HP, 10 strength, 18 skill, 20 speed, 18 luck, 4 defense, 4 resistance, and 5 constitution, which is below average in every single way except for luck. In Chapter 11 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
we finally get Hector, a lord that most players consider fairly good because of his high strength and defense, in addition to using axes instead of swords. In order to escape the assassins without using Matthew, I charge west and break the wall to hide Matthew in a corner, and then I let the thief open the doors for me to let in the flood of enemy archers and soldiers. I only have to heal once because Hector's incredible defense is already coming in strong. After letting the thief open one more door, I kill him and claim the red gem, then easily take down Wire with the wolf bale. In only 4 level ups, Hector already has gained 3 strength and 3 defense, some strength and bulk that my team will definitely need. Chapter 12 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
Is hard at the best of times and is a nightmare in any challenge run. Eliwood dies to most combinations of 2 or 3 units, and trying to keep Hector's squad out of Pegasus range means Hector gets slowed greatly in his efforts to help. I end up placing Eliwood on a mountain for extra defense and avoid, and let the low HP Pegasi activate healing AI to lessen the pressure. But did you know that units in healing AI will still attack you if the fort is in attack range? Eliwood knows that now. Matthew gets chased down by Pegasi despite my best efforts, and Hector abandons Oswin and Sarah to the boss and Pegasi murder squad in order to save his best friend Eliwood. Hector grabs the secret book and gets ready to fight the remaining Pegasi, while Eliwood finishes the bandits and solos the boss over the course of several turns. He might be bad, but with the weapon triangle is once again better. All that's left after that is to chase down the remaining archer, and we've finally cleared the map. It only took over an hour. In Chapter 13 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
I once again struggle to find a good place to leave all my force-deployed non-lord units, and Eliwood keeps almost dying, in addition to getting terrible level-ups. The Mine Village is lost well before I can approach it, and so is the Torch Village, so no Merlinus defend map for me. Fighting Guy is a problem, as not only does he charge me aggressively, but he also comes flanked by archers and soldiers that threaten Eliwood. Hector gets doubled and faces 30% crit, but I still need to rig hand axe hit off of him so Hector can counter an archer on enemy phase. I debate using a lot of strategies that some might not consider be in the spirit of the run, but I settle on a simple Marcus body block that redirects aggro to Hector. I eventually defeat all the aggressive units on the map and unlock the Hector Eliwood C support. Hector charges forward and takes on the rest of the mobile enemies on his own, while Eliwood stays several turns of movement away until he can finally heal on a fort. After Hector gets a great level up and kills the boss, I take some time to buy hand axes and vulneraries in preparation for the upcoming chapters. In Chapter 14 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
we finally undeploy our swiftly dying entourage. We get assisted by Urk, who is a green unit, and thus not our problem. He dies as soon as a mercenary flanks him, but at least he tried. With 17 defense, Hector cannot take damage on this map, and even Eliwood's mediocre 8 defense is still helped by the full defense support with Hector, allowing him to take on soldiers and mercenaries while taking little damage in return. For the first time ever, I'm actually grateful for the rain, as it slows Eric's cavalry squad down long enough for Eliwood to get a little bit of experience. Once they close in on me though, I resign myself to rescuing Eliwood with Hector and tanking my way through until a handful of pirates are all that remain on the map. I once again am completing a map with no villages left alive, an almost dead Eliwood, and a Hector who's getting exhausted from carrying this run on his back. Chapter 15 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
is an incredibly easy defend map. While I could easily just hold the throne with Hector and win, I have 2 smaller goals that I want to take this opportunity to accomplish. First, I want Eliwood to get some experience, so I leave him on the throne where he can dodge most of the fighters and only really gets threatened by armor knights and mages. Second, I really want the Draco shield that Seelan's carrying, so I want to try to set up Hector to kill him so I can get it. The only problem is that Hector can't crit Seelan and is too slow to double, meaning I need to set up 2 turns where Seelan is in 2 range. It takes some RNG abuse to let Eliwood survive the second to last turn on the throne, but once he finally does, I am able to set up the kill on Seelan and take that Draco shield for my own, which is probably going straight to Eliwood since Hector already capped his defense. In Chapter 16 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
we get reunited with Lyn, the last person we're going to trust to be a playable combatant. I give Eliwood the Draco shield, bringing his defense up to a respectable 10. But can we just take a moment to look at how cursed this Eliwood is compared to his averages? 2 points below the curve on strength and speed, and barely average on everything else, not counting the new +2 defense? The good news is, the only thing we're asking him to do on this map is survive, and rush down to save the village from the thief, but even this Eliwood could do that much. My Funds Rank in Lyn mode was only decent, so she joins with a red gem, but that plus her allies' weapons should be enough to get my bank funded again. I rush Lyn forward to prevent as many enemies as I can from attacking her groupies, while Hector and Eliwood save the south village from bandits. I haven't successfully saved a village since Chapter 12, so this means a lot to me. While Eliwood and Lyn claim their rewards, Hector charges north to start pushing through the bulk of enemy forces. Lyn and Eliwood take on the reinforcement cavalry in the forest, while Hector rushes forward to kill the boss and finish the map. Lyn dodge tanks, Eliwood breaks his rapier and hides behind her, and we wrap up the map. Chapter 17 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
sees our trio of lords struggling to make headway against a castle full of archers, nomads, and other annoying enemies. While Hector can certainly hold his own, Lyn's dodge tanking abilities will be tested by archers that can do half of her HP and damage off of 40% hit rates, and Eliwood is still trying to catch up to either of his friends in usefulness. I hang out in the entry room and let the enemies come to me, sacrificing the treasure and all the green units in the process. To his credit, Raven is laser focused on his task, choosing to attack my maxed out Hector who cannot take damage instead of the vulnerable Eliwood. Speaking of dedication, all all of these green soldiers valiantly give their lives trying to kill this single archer. May their souls rest in peace. By the time I round the corner, the archer room is nearing capacity, and cavalry reinforcements are on my heels, but as this map designer probably said, there can always be more enemies. Eventually, the reinforcements stop, though, and after thinning the ranks with Hector, I pulled the trigger on the flood of archers. After constant babying, my Eliwood is finally starting to look reasonable, though it's once again Hector who takes the boss kill and finishes the map. Chapter 18 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
It's a defend map with no useful bonus objectives. After considering the usefulness of trying to level up Eliwood some more, I decide to default to perfecting the strategy that worked so well on my Marcus solo run. Unequip Hector and let him stand on the armory. I do need to kill the shamans as they can still do reasonable damage to Hector, but a flood of mercenaries, archers, and Pegasus Knights all fail to reach the 21 attack threshold necessary to even deal damage to Hector. And here I thought this was supposed to be Hector hard mode. On Chapter 19 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
We are introduced to Dart, whose only redeeming quality are the weapons Hector takes from him. I can't reasonably defend him from all the pirates in Pegasi, so he, along with the green unit Fiora, get axed. And shot. The pirates in Pegasi pose little threat to the lords, but the Nomads have both decent attack and surprising accuracy, and their sheer number reminds me of trying to chase Succubi in the pits of hell as a warrior in Diablo 1. After far too many turns, I finally thin their ranks enough so it's safe for Lyn to leave the forest, and I can push south towards Uhay. While Lyn might be suffering, Eliwood is finally coming into his own, and with careful attacks, I managed to feed Eliwood the boss kill, dealing 1 damage with an iron sword, and getting the best level up Eliwood has gotten all run in return. Since it took the Lordly Trio in
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
far longer than 15 turns to kill Uhay, we have to skip the Gaiden chapter and follow Uhai's long-winded instructions to arrive at the Dragon's Gate. All 3 lords are force deployed here anyway, how bad could it be? Well, while Hector one-shots Cameron, his cavalry squad still is a block that slows my progress, as it isn't safe to take Lyn out of a forest since all her durability so heavily relies on evasion. I slowly push my way through and build some supports, but I miss Legalt, the member card, and the other thieves. From here my approach is simple. Lyn holds the fighters in the treasure room, Hector camps the alternating mage and armor knight reinforcements in the north, and Eliwood tries to stay out of the way to avoid creating a pileup. By the time Lyn and Eliwood can get in to help with the mages, Hector is poisoned and almost dead. It's a good thing Eliwood packed an elixir. After what feels like an eternity, the reinforcements finally stop and I can lure the last of the dark mages out of the throne room. While I wish there was some way to feed Eliwood this boss kill, between having no effective weaponry and the boss's massive spear, I bust through with Hector instead and finish this miserable map. In Chapter 21 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
we get Ninian, who is not a lord and will not be used. I bring as few weapons as possible into this map, as this is one of the last easily accessible armories we will have access to for quite some time, and because my rules dictate I can't deploy Merlinas, my inventory space comes at a premium. While Hector takes the lead and pushes into the darkness full of Wyverns, some still manage to get past and threaten to kill Lyn. I end up stranded in the middle of the map, having to RNG abuse to slowly work my way through the flood of Wyverns that not only attack with javelins, but also can't be one-rounded by anyone on my team. I thought that when the Armor Knights had caught up, that would have been the end of the Wyverns, but no, they just keep coming out of the darkness. Turn after turn, I rig dodge after dodge just to keep my lords alive. I eventually get pushed back far enough that I actually have to rig a Manikadi crit just to keep Ninian out of danger. But eventually it stops, and while I scramble to make sure Hector doesn't die to poison, I buy another full inventory of weapons and prepare to end the map, rigging one last dodge on Lyn against the boss for good measure. Chapter 22 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
is another defend map, the perfect excuse to finally cap out Eliwood. I give Isidore's Angelic Robe to Lyn, as Eliwood is almost reaching Hector's level of hit points, and she needs all the durability help she can get. With the first wave of enemies quickly overwhelming me, I retreat my lords back to the staircase. This map's gimmick is that the majority of enemies you fight wield Reaver weapons, flipping and doubling the triangle and turning previously good mashups into bad ones, but all that succeeds in doing is giving Lyn and Eliwood more room to breathe against Wyvern Riders and Armor Knights. After Eliwood caps, I'm not getting any benefit from killing enemies, so I trade Eliwood and Hector's weapons and use them as roadblocks to stop the enemy on the stairs. I take this time to review my team. Hector is incredibly blessed in skill and defense, and still above average in everything except for speed. Eliwood really pulled himself up from where he was at level 11, meeting or exceeding all of his averages except for strength. Lyn is perhaps the saddest of my units in this run, exceeding only her average luck while being behind in almost everything else. Chapter 23 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
is the obligatory desert map, made more complicated by Fog of War, fictionally positioned as a sandstorm. The Gaiden requirement to reach Genesis is 700 experience, which is impossible because all of my lords are capped. Since Hawkeye and Pent are green units, I let them do whatever they want, and clear most of the enemies on the map while my lords look for treasure that'll sell for money that I'll probably never use. After killing the Killer Axe boss and most of their crew, something surprising happens. Hawkeye gets killed by the Hand Axe boss. With him dead and Pent stuck in a corner, I'm given all the time in the world to walk around the map picking up every bit of treasure I want. I also take this chance to boost Lynn's support with both Hector and Eliwood up to B, before slowly meandering back to Jasmine and finishing him off, only to then be forced to slowly creep north to finish off the last few enemies in the desert. Because
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
is a Lords Only challenge, I naturally get Linus's version of four-fanged offense. I initially try to rush up into the town, but I get surrounded by Wyverns and mercenaries who stop my progress and kill Lynn. Trying again, I send Lynn south to fight mercenaries in the forest, while Eliwood and Hector go north. This goes a bit better, but the Wyverns are still too strong, and I start running out of weapons and vulneraries. Third go around, everyone stays together, I quickly killed the southern mercenaries, and slowly push north into the town. Eliwood and Hector gain their A support, just in time to fight all the pirates that finish ransacking every village on the map. I lure the bolting mage down while dealing with a constant flood of wyverns, but manage to stabilize just before I use up all my weapons. I finish off the sage, lure the silver sword hero, then with him dead I finally restock at the armory, just in time to have no aggressive enemies left on the map. I buy some reaver weapons at the north armory for later, lure out Linus's new guards, and finish him off with a combo attack of all three lords to finally end this slog of a map. Chapter 25 in
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
requires you to claim 3 castles, while forts spam large waves of relatively weak reinforcements. This map is designed to be a training ground for your weaker units, however I cannot gain any experience until next chapter. The fastest way I could think of to clear this map was to send Lynn south to take the pirate castle, while Hector and Eliwood went north to take on everything else. Farina actually manages to get herself killed before she can even talk to Hector, meaning I can't spend all my gold to buy her inventory. The cavalry reinforcements don't last too long, so I'm able to claim the castle number 2, but the monks never seem to stop. I use the bridge to fight as many of them as I can on enemy phase with Eliwood, and when the monks finally slow down after the boss runs out of Purge Tome uses, I close in, end him, buy some more steel weapons at the South Armory, and finish off the map. In Chapter 26 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
we finally get our first Heaven Seal, meaning Lynn or Eliwood can promote. I give it to Eliwood, as even though Lynn needs the help more, Eliwood gets a horse and javelin access, making him far more useful than Lynn's bow access. I give Eliwood a javelin and iron lance, and throw him against as many enemies as he can take. Most of the wyverns on this map have gather point AI, meaning they'll cluster in the north, east, and south of the map, if none of my units are in range. I take advantage of that to keep Pent, who rescues Louise, out of combat. And while Hector and Lynn have to fight some enemies to keep Pent safe, I try to funnel every bit of experience that I can to Eliwood. I choose not to try to visit the Killer Weapon Armory or the Southern Village, and after 11 turns, Vida decides that she's bored of sitting in a corner and leaves, ending the map. For Chapter 27 of
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
because I have no Guiding Ring users alive, I get Kenneth's version of Pale Flower of Darkness. I take out the General by the start, give his speed wings to Hector, and have him and Lynn hold out on the inside of the room while Hector takes on the massive flood of wyverns from the doorway. By the time he finishes, the Thieves are already taking the map's treasure, but I don't really care about that. I care more about Harkin, who is recruited by Eliwood and carries the only brave sword in the game. After letting him slowly approach through the snow, I continue to treat the map like an Eliwood solo run, and power him through the remaining enemies using Lynn and Hector for moral support, as well as support bonus support. Over the last 2 maps, Eliwood has used almost exclusively lances, surpassing his sword rank and getting some amazing level ups on the way. While I don't plan on using the Rex Hosta on this run, the extra hit and crit from Messer and Lances still doesn't go amiss on javelins. While I could go south to farm the rest of the enemies and get back some treasure from the Thieves, my weapon uses are running quite low, so I kill Kenneth while he still has Purge equipped and get ready for the nightmare that will be Battle Before Dawn. Battle Before Dawn is one of the most infamous maps in
Trust nobody. Fire Emblem only on Game Boy Advance.
because green unit RNG can dictate whether you succeed or fail. I know from my Marcus solo run that I have at best 6 turns to reach the file before he gets overwhelmed, so I book it to the east with Eliwood leading the charge. I break a Sword Reaver crit on this hero to get to the door on turn 2, eat a bolting from Ursula on turn 4 just to maximize my movement, Jafar dies going into turn 5, but because my dead rush, I'm able to get Eliwood just outside the door by turn 6, and he survives turn 7 with literally 1 hit point left. I get some incredibly lucky dodges, am grateful for low HP targeting AI as enemies continue to throw themselves against Eliwood instead of potentially one rounding a file. Hector and Lynn finally catch up by turn 10, and while it takes some RNG abuse to avoid losing Hector or Eliwood, I manage to kill all the promoted enemies by turn 12. I watch Nino dodge bolting only to get doubled and die anyway on turn 13, and even manage to find the thief with the boots on turn 15, safely ending the most difficult chapter in the game with only a handful of RNG abuses required. Only a handful. Barely any at all. Seriously. Chapter 29 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
gives me the second Heaven Seal, meaning Lyn earns her promotion to Blade Lord. I slap my boots on Eliwood's horse to double down on him being my ace and step into the dreaded Cog of Destiny. Slog of Density is a route map full of mages with massive numbers of reinforcements, all with 1-2 range, and especially notable are the Valkyries with speed so high that they can't be doubled by anyone on my team, and status staves that put my units to sleep or berserk them constantly. I take on Bong of Longevity by getting Lyn put to sleep on a forest, protecting her with Hector, riding Eliwood forward to clear out as many enemies as I can, and ultimately just waiting until I can finally get out of the starting zone. I set up a formation such that even with everyone put to sleep I don't die, luring down the most threatening enemies one at a time. And when I finally make it to the forts, Vida spawns from behind. More Valks and Monks, I recruit Vida for her spear before sending her to safety, hold out killing Wyverns, then when no other enemies are left on the map, I send Vida to the shop to buy silver weapons. I run Eliwood forward to finish the bishops, then set up Eliwood to take on Lloyd, finishing him off with Lyn, ending the map, and finally earning Hector's much needed promotion. Chapter 30 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
is probably the most normal playthrough of a map that I've had the opportunity to do since Chapter 11. In this map, we get access to Hector and one other unit. I bring Eliwood, despite the fact that canonically Eliwood has to leave Hector alone and go on his own quest at the same time. Many people choose to bring Matthew to the map as there are a lot of good items to steal and some chests, but Matthew is not a lord, and is also dead, meaning Hector and his best friend are on their own. This map features a large number of armor knights and a handful of thieves and mages, as well as poison tiles, as an homage to the Nomads Guide and chapter in FE6. I'm used to playing this map carefully, with Hector being my only combat unit, but with Eliwood being strong enough to hold his own, I ride him north to grab the Wolf Bale, while Hector stays south and deals with the armor knights and thieves. I kill Kame with Eliwood and try to claim the space with Eliwood because Hector's about to die to poison, but despite being claim instead of seize, it does still need to be Hector who arrives, so I replay the map a bit safer, bring in Elixir, and let Hector get the kill on Kame for a more fitting way to end the map. In Chapter 31 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
we get a message from Lord Nurgle. I wonder what it could say. Unfortunately, those messengers decide to flip the famous axiom and shoot us first. This is perhaps the only defend map in the game that gets tense, as the vast majority of enemies on the map are promoted and dangerous. The green units only slow the onslaught for a turn or two before they all die. With so many snipers and shamans to the east, I leave Hector and Eliwood to deal with them, but I run out of hand axes and javelins. Lyn bounces around dealing with Myrmidons, Armor Knights, and anyone else who tries to sneak left, while Hector and Eliwood hold the right stairwell. Hector faces high chances of death against Nosferatu druids, so I'm forced to retreat him back while Eliwood stays in the front. Some snipers get dangerously close to seizing the throne, but with my three lords' powers combined, I'm able to hold them off, avoid getting killed, and the map ends with reinforcing green units rushing valiantly towards their imminent demise. I then get Battle Preparations 31X, which is not going to make its own video. I buy some items, end of story. Victory or Death is Chapter 32 of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
which means we're in the home stretch. Nils is force deployed on the map, but I won't be using him as anything more than a mobile inventory. Wyverns on this map have gather point AI, just like in Chapter 26, and love to gather on this mountain in particular. My units with supports are fast and strong enough that they rarely get hit, so I'm mostly just concerned about killing everything quickly enough to keep Nils safe. I visit Sophia in the south to get a talisman for Eliwood, then camp out the reinforcements at the corner. There's no way I can push through this many enemies on player phase, so I charge forward and settle in with my remaining 1-2 range weapons for the Shaman Slog. I send Lyn back to defend Nils from the frankly obscene numbers of reinforcements, while Eliwood and Hector fight for several turns to cross a single tile bridge. Eventually I have to rescue Nils, and I get Lyn trapped on a forest on low HP, so I rush Eliwood forward to kill Limstella, get Hector almost killed by her bolting, but dodge a crucial berserk staff to seize the map with everyone at critical HP, but still alive. Chapter 33 is the endgame of
Trust Nobody, Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance.
This map is a boss rush, where one door opens every turn and unleashes morphs of bosses from earlier in the game. To kill Uhai on turn 1, I rig a Bravesword crit with Eliwood, giving me a safe place to stash the force-deployed Athos and Nils. Turn 2 opens Kenneth's door, and turn 3 opens Brendan's Warriors. Turn 4 opens up Darren, who challenges Hector to a rematch that goes about how you'd expect. And turn 5 reveals Ursula and Germ, who I kill through the wall. Turn 6 shows the strongest foes, Lloyd and Linus, who will get dealt with by rigged dodges and crits. Nurgle gets revealed, and his Berserk Druid has almost perfect accuracy against Lyn, so I run her south and make Eliwood dodge a coin flip. My 6 HP Eliwood cannot take an Ereshkigal hit, but Hector barely survives with 1 HP, so I double Nurgle with Basilicos, and rig a dodge with Eliwood to survive. Nurgle then attacks me on enemy phase, which I also have to rig a dodge for, then my counter ends the map. This is what I would say if we didn't have to fight the Fire Dragon. I set up Hector's supports and wait, dealing 44 damage on enemy phase. I chug elixirs and do this 2 more times to defeat the final boss and complete Fire Emblem, only on Game Boy Advance, by trusting nobody. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. Fire Emblem 7 Lords Only was a very fun challenge that, despite needing some RNG abuse, ended up being completely possible. My biggest surprise was how Eliwood transformed from being an incredibly useless unit to being the absolute savior of the run. There's no way Battle Before Dawn would have been possible without him. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the series, and let me know what other fun Fire Emblem game challenges you want me to tackle in the comments down below. Thank you so much for your support, and once again, this is Mithril Zenith, signing out.